And of course, welcome back to this is the business segment. We want to focus on the Kenya diaspora remittances into the country, and joining us will be Ruth Kirima, who is the executive board member, Kenya Diaspora Alliance. And of course, you do remember what the Prime Cabinet Secretary, that is Musalia Mudavadi, yesterday said, that the government targets to grow diaspora remittances to at least 1 trillion shillings annually by the year 2027, up from the current 671 billion shillings to be sent home from last year's proceedings. And of course, joining us here is none other than Ruth. Ruth, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Thank you, and appreciate your welcome.
Okay. We start off from there. The Prime Cabinet Secretary, you hear that the government is targeting to at least annually collect 1 trillion. In your view, is that possible?
Yes, I believe that's very achievable, with the government working with various companies or organizations like KDA, international stakeholders. I think it is very achievable.
And in terms of the last year, we had collected 61 billion shillings. What necessitated such kind of remittances? And of course, the relations between the people who are living in the diaspora, are they investing in their own country?
Yes, I would say that's a very key point for our conference this year, because the push is the government program on skills transfer and labor migration, thereby encouraging our diaspora to reinvest back home. And that is a very turnaround view from what we have had previously. Additionally, we're playing the long game with our youth. So with our youth studying in diaspora, we're also encouraging them to keep this very much in line when they're looking at their profile later on. So horizontally, it's vital for both age groups and our youth.
And in terms of investing in the youth, given that you have seen a number of them, especially here in our country, are unemployed, what are some of those opportunities they can tap into in the diaspora and leverage it back to our own country?
Various, including looking at aspects of the diaspora, like particularly products that we invest to buy here, and turning around to look at what actually we can make ourselves. And so those opportunities would very much be encouraged by also allocating specific pieces of land for areas of interest and investing in those to build up. So it's a two-way tap in, I think.
Given that we've just talked about investing in land here in the country, what are some of the incentives that support Kenyans who are living in the diaspora? Because you see, they remit a lot of money, but are there incentives from the initiative, the money they remit? Absolutely.
And specifically in the economic zone, we have allocated quite a number of acres working with the government, especially for that, for areas of interest, for particular diaspora companies or individuals to jump in to this workplace because they have that as a handout and waiting moment.
So in terms of the lands that you, let's say for example, the Alliance is purchasing on behalf of these people who are living in the diaspora, or those people who are in the diaspora, at least you've given them civic education to ensure that they invest in those lands. So what are some of these opportunities they can tap into, especially in the manufacturing sector?
Well, various, including KDA identified certain products that we were importing that we could also actually make in the backyard, including mosquito nets and syringes. And so we're encouraging that aspect of the diaspora to change, that dynamic to change, and looking at what can we make that we're currently actually importing.
And in terms of supporting those people, once they set up shop, let's say for example, those plants are up and running, what more does the Alliance do for those people?
What more the Alliance does is firstly, keep an eye on various ongoing and changing needs, but additionally, to support that specific interest of the diaspora wanting to invest. And so if it is, I don't know, cars, then we totally focus on that aspect.
And in terms of the conference, we just talked about the convention that will be happening, the Kenya Diaspora Homecoming Convention, is expected to focus on two key areas, which is skill transfer and labor migration. Why those two areas?
Because we realized that we were actually doing this the wrong way. We were encouraging our diaspora to come home, to bring their skills here, and the value of that. But we've turned that around to actually realizing that the skills transfer and the labor migration in the opposite way is equally as productive in terms of I make my pound, but if I return it to Kenya, then perhaps in the village, Shosho can do something A, B, C, and D. So we're doing like a cross-train on both ways.
And in terms of these quarters who have been making this argument that if we take our skilled labor to other countries, then are we not decapitating our own country when it comes to human resource?
I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's about a balance. So you can send the incentive to the right amount of diaspora and turn that around. But I think that's about a balance, not at all a yes or no.
And in terms of the alliance working with Kenyans in the diaspora, how have they received the alliance, especially creating some of these opportunities back to the country?
Well, as far as I know, they've received very, very positive response and we're expecting to have by 2027 an income of 1 trillion per year.
And in terms of the international partners that you're working with and some of the partners you're working here in the country, in terms of capacity building, how has that panned out?
Very, very well again, especially the second point, because of course the more people we hold hands with, the further our program goes and the wider spread it is.
And you have at least approached various counties like Taita Taveta, Kiambu, Kilifi, Machakos for land investment. Why those areas?
Well, we realized actually that KDA could work with more local government and achieve more local support for their projects, including Kiambu. We have now got 20 acres working with the county government to progress the such. And so we just wanted to localize it more.
And you know, so many of these Kenyans who are living in diaspora, I even have a brother who lives in the United States. In terms of investing back into the country, in terms of trust deficit, you see their family members, as much as you're sending back the money to invest, let's say, in a property, they either misuse it or use it for another function. So how does the alliance come in terms of advising those people who are living in the diaspora?
Unfortunately, we don't have a policy on that, and we're guided by the government's view. And as far as I know, they have not directed us. So I will not be having the remit to do that, but of course I understand. Having lived in the diaspora for many years, I have walked that road and very much understand what you're saying, and we wait for government guidance.
And in terms of the convention, what more can we look forward to?
I think you can look forward to a very broader agenda, especially if I could point out sports. This year we're working with the NBA chairman and just widening our scope on the homecoming, and so very much more broader views than the previous one. So, and I suppose we'll keep that track, keep broadening it to more and more every year. And what are some of the challenges you might have encountered while working with Kenyans in the diaspora? Well, as you say, ups and downs, but we have a very strong relationship with them, and as I mentioned, our income annually is steadily growing. So, you know, we have our ups and downs, but essentially we also reach out to diaspora, and it's a very good relationship, and we continue to focus on that.
In terms of those challenges, that ups and downs you're talking about, is it lack of enough policies, or what are these gaps, actual gaps, if you can explain?
Well, again, we're waiting for government guidance on that, so we can't really act on it before directed by the government. But on the personal level, it is very difficult when I see that play out in front of our diaspora abroad, because I think it takes away a lot of confidence from vital resources that actually could be coming back home.
What are some of the success stories that you might have encountered while working for the Alliance, and in terms of ensuring these Kenyans in the diaspora at least invest back optimally into the country?
Well, one aspect of huge success is that we've been importing syringes and mosquito nets. So diaspora has actually linked in with local manufacturers, and we're now making our own syringes and mosquito nets. So that's the line that we've been walking.
In terms of the importing of the country, you do know that the current administration is focusing on producing more items into the country and to forego importing more into the country. In terms of the incentives I want to go back to, what are these civic educations that you give to the Kenyans in the diaspora, as well as their families here, given that they do have an extension of families and relatives here, so that those funds are not misused, they are channeled through the right way?
Okay, I can answer on behalf of KDA that all we can do is direct people, but we do not have the remit actually of guiding more than that. And so, as you can imagine, it's quite a political point, not really for KDA, because we can't, jump in that particular pot.
And in terms of corporate social responsibility that's supposed now to address some of those issues, how do you gauge these people in terms of the CSRs that you do? Because I'm sure you have been doing some.
Yes. Okay. I think the only way I would say we gauge them is actually by our history with them and our forward-looking situation with them. So I would say that's a normal capital assessment, not particularly in this area, but the usual capital assessment. However, of course, as KDA, we're very focused to encourage those companies there to step back and work forward with that.
And in terms of the fees, many of Kenyans who are living in the diaspora have been complaining about the fees. So what are some of the recommendations that you have made, or are they making, to ensure that the fees are not that high?
In terms of that, we're actually reaching out to stakeholders to support that very point and manage the cost. Yeah. And
does that boost confidence among the people who are living in the diaspora?
As far as I know, I'm in direct touch with the South African diaspora, Australian, and European diasporas, and as far as I know, it's working a treat.
And if you're just joining us, we are conversing with Ruth Kirima, who is the executive board member at the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, to discuss how Kenyans in the diaspora can contribute to the country's development agenda, which has been, of course, exacerbated by the current administration led by President William Ruto. It was just the other day the Prime Cabinet Secretary, that is Musalia Mudavadi, clearly stated that the Kenyan government targets to grow diaspora remittances to 1 trillion shillings annually by the year 2027, and up from 671 billion shillings that they sent home. And of course, these are some of the key areas the government is leveraging on. Ruth has just told us that those funds can be channeled, of course, through acquisition of properties, especially land. That is where we have even seen manufacturing plants. She's talking about that we need to manufacture syringes and mosquito nets, which are largely imported into the country. And in terms of the production, you do know that this current administration is focusing on that majorly. They don't want to import into the country. What about the agricultural sector? These lands that you have enabled people to acquire in Taita Taveta, Kiambu, Kilifi, Machakos, those are arid lands. Are you even telling them to consider agriculture at the end of the day?
Yes, as you say, at the end of the day, it's a conversation, and yes, we put it on the table, and then they decide to pick up what's best. But absolutely, it's all about that before we jump to the next step. So yes, it's on the table, and then we take it from there. Yeah.
And of course, the alliance itself. Tell us more about the alliance, given that Kenyans, I'm sure some of them are hearing the alliance for the first time. So who is the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, and what is their mission?
Okay, the KDA is a para-government association, and their mission is to coordinate on a global level our diaspora in various countries. Additionally, we are aligning all our ambassadors, again, in the various countries, to come together and support the diaspora together. So we're holding the diaspora together in various ways and reaching out in any way to invite them to accept some of our support. So we're a global organization reaching out to all diaspora, and particularly working out with all ambassadors.
And of course, we have also seen the Kenya Diaspora Alliance have interacted with you. This is not the first time. Even before the finance committee that is led by Kimani Kuria, when they were talking about the Finance Bill 2024, the withdrawn now, the Kenya Diaspora Alliance clearly talked about some of the taxes that are being raised. So what are these areas that are being taxed? You can talk to the government to ensure that you're not taxed at the end of the day, so that you can be efficient to the people who are in the diaspora.
Yes, I'm afraid I can't be specific about that because I joined in a bit later. So.
Okay, and of course focusing on that as well, let's go back to the Kenya Diaspora Homecoming Convention that is expected. When is it going to happen? And of course, aside from skill transfer and labor migration, how many delegates do we anticipate to come in the country? You don't have to say exactly how many, but you can at least quote a figure. And aside from that, what are these emerging trends that you're going to address in that convention?
I would say the emerging trends, for one, as I would say again, sports, wider remit of not just finances, but supporting other skills in the diaspora. Regarding the Homecoming Convention, I'm unaware of the numbers because we carry on all the time. Additionally, I would say this Homecoming Convention, I think, highlights very many support systems of KDA that the diaspora doesn't know exist, including myself, including my family. We just don't know that they're there. So we're very much highlighting that and pushing forward just in terms of publicity. But in the meantime, in the convention, of course, we're reaching out to all Kenya societies and working with them, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that let their diaspora know what is going. So we work with all of them.
And in terms of the convention, is it going to be hosted here in the capital? Here in Nairobi,
yes.
Then will it be open to the various youths you're talking about, given that I told you majority of them are unemployed? So are we going to see some sort of a career fair where we do have experts from KDA on the ground explaining to them, these are the opportunities you'll get in the United Kingdom, these are the opportunities you'll get in the United States? Will there be such kind of an exercise there?
Absolutely. And firstly, to answer your question, yes, our conference is being held in Nairobi this year. And absolutely, as I mentioned, our youth training program, that is the key way to encourage them to move forward and to keep the skills and labor issue on their horizon. Because at the end of the day, if we don't work with them, you know, they don't go as far. So absolutely, that's one of the key areas.
And as we're winding up, give us your final remarks. And in terms of the target that the government is seeking, $1 trillion annually, collecting at least $1 trillion shillings annually. Talk to us about that particular goal. And you do know that 2030 is around the corner. We have some SDGs as well to achieve at the end of the day. And your final remarks in terms of the Homecoming Convention.
I would say that the goal of 1 million is very achievable, as the government is working with various other parastatals and private investment companies. So I would say it's very achievable. My last comment would be to reach out to all Kenyans locally and all Kenyans in the diaspora to engage, please, with one of the support systems covered by KDA. There is space for everybody, and we welcome everybody.
Thank you so much. And that is Ruth Kirima, who is the Executive Board Member at the Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Thank you for giving us your time. And of course, she's just talking to us about the remittances that our very own Kenyans who are living out there are contributing to the country's development agenda. The Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi clearly states that 671 billion shillings will see at least a little bit of a boost by the end year of 2027, where $1 trillion shillings will be collected annually from Kenyans who are living in the diaspora. That concludes our conversation on our business